Very much. And joining me now, the chairman of the Republican National Committee, Reince Priebus. Chairman, good to have you with us. Look, I know you've had a good day. You delivered a walloping, and that's got to feel really good. I want to ask about immigration. You just heard the president, quote, "I'm eager to see what they have to offer, but what I'm going to do is, what I'm not going to do is just wait. They have every opportunity to pass legislation that can supersede my executive action." Obviously, those being the key words. So the question is, are Republicans going to pass something? Are they going to compromise with the president, or is he going to use executive action?
I don't believe a thing he says. So, I mean, he's been talking about immigration reform for 7 years. So, I mean, you're using his words as if they actually mean something. I mean, and asking me to respond to it. He's been talking about this when he had 60 votes in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi in the House, and he didn't do a darn thing. And all he's been doing for the last year is lying to Hispanic voters across the country, saying, I'm going to sign an executive amnesty before the end of summer. And then people went crazy, and then he said, well, no, I'm not going to do it because he didn't want to upset the midterms. And then the people that wanted him to do it went crazy. So then he said, well, then I'm going to do it after the midterms. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's not trustworthy on this issue. And the only thing he has done is he's unified the country against his immigration policy.
Here's the thing I have to ask you, though. Today, look, maybe their words weren't perfect, but you have Mitch McConnell and the president saying they want to compromise. But you just came out here and said you don't believe a thing the president says, and you use the word lying specifically to talk to him.
Not on immigration. No, because that's what he's doing. Not on immigration. He's using
I'm just saying it's not a tone.
For politics.
You're not putting forth a tone that is, all right, let's do a fresh start and work together. That's all I'm saying.
It's the same tone on immigration. This president, even if you put yourself in his shoes and you adopted his view on these policies, he has screwed up even his own priorities on this issue by mishandling the politics on this from the very beginning. So now to come back and say, after the American people repudiated the policies of Barack Obama and everyone that was connected to him, to now say, well, what are you guys going to do to compromise with the person that the American people had just repudiated? I think it's a little bizarre.
All right, I see your point, but when you talk about repudiating the policies, I mean, when you look at some of the issues that were on the ballots yesterday, you're right, the voters repudiated the Democratic candidates. But when I look at the issues...
Ask Scott Brown in New Hampshire if immigration and border security was an important issue in New Hampshire.
But let me ask you about what was on the ballots in different states. Minimum wage, marijuana, gun safety, abortion rights, criminal justice reform. All of those were wins. Those are Democratic issues. Those are policies this president supports. So I guess the question I'm asking you is,
and it didn't work.
Republicans hear the message? But a lot of those passed. The candidates didn't win, but the ballot measures passed. So is this a moment for Republicans to say, now we've won, we also hear the country on some of these issues, we need to move a little bit?
Listen, I think that clearly, and where the ground is that I would agree with you on, is that clearly people, I think, are sick and tired of Washington, and they're tired of things not getting done. So bringing it down now to where I think it's very clear we do need to deal with is that I do think it's important to find things that we can agree on. I do think it's important for the president to not just use words, but to go to the Capitol, find out what of the 360 bills that are sitting in Harry Reid's desk that he can agree with on, he should follow through on. And I think that's what's important. But what happened yesterday wasn't just the repudiation of Barack Obama and his policies. It was also an acceptance of Republican policies in governing in states like Maryland, Wisconsin, Michigan, Massachusetts. These Republican governors won everywhere across the country. And
that was, look, the Republican governors winning was significant. It's a fair point. The point I was just making was on some of those other policies that did pass. But what about health care? Chairman, you and I talked a lot about this. Senator Ted Cruz saying today the first order of business for Republicans should be the repeal of Obamacare. And I mean, I'm sorry, but that's a broken record. And they still don't have the votes to do it, right? You just don't have the votes to override a presidential veto. Mitch McConnell talked about it today. Here's what he said.
If I had the ability, Carl, obviously I'd get rid of it. Obviously, it's also true he's still there. So we'll be discussing how to go forward on this issue when we get back.
Do you have a heart-to-heart with people like Ted Cruz and say, look, we need to do something. I know we all hate Obamacare, but please, let's do something that can pass. Let's show the American people we can do that. Leave it alone for now on this repeal issue?
Well, I think a lot of these Republicans and even the Democrats that were running for their lives yesterday, don't forget, they were all running from Obamacare as well in the vote that they took. The fact is, much of what happened yesterday had a lot to do with Obamacare. So I don't think that these senators would be doing their job after they just got elected in a historic election to not go forward and try to replace Obamacare with much better patient-centered, not Washington-centered. So, you know, I think it is important to replace it with as much much that we can with something better. But I think that's something that the senators have to come together in Washington and try to figure out.
And before we go, when you talked about those governorships that you're happy about, one man who's responsible for that was Chris Christie, of course, the head of the Republican Governors Association. He helped the GOP win more governorships than anyone had forecasted. Today he said he's not going to change, but he stands by what he said to a voter recently. I want to play it.
So listen, you want to have the conversation later? I'm happy to have it, buddy. But until that time, sit down and shut up.
Last night, exit polls showed 64% of Americans say Chris Christie would not make a good president. Chairman, would you vote for him?
Of course, if he's the nominee of our party, of course I'd vote for him and work for him. I mean, and I support him, and I thank him for his good work, and I support him in what he said to the protester. I mean, the person was interrupting an important event for a long time, and he was being out of control, and at some point you have to say, you know, let's move on. We've got a lot of people here that want to move on with the program. You know, I think it's much to do of nothing.
Well, you said let's move on, a little different than what he said, but I hear your point. All right, Chairman Priebus, always good to see you, and I appreciate your time tonight.
All right, thank you.